If you're like me, you grew up with Wii Sports. For Wii owners, you really couldn't escape this game, and trust me, I tried. But that's really only a half joke. I mean, this came bundled with the system. They were really desperate for me to have this. And then there's its sequel, which I've played like maybe once. Wii Sports was really just a tech demo, but what if I told you that this game was actually a masterpiece? Let me explain. As I mentioned, this was a tech demo. Nintendo couldn't just give you a Wiimote and expect you to know what to do with it. They had to show you. First time I tried to use one of these things, I accidentally ate it, and I had to get it surgically removed.
If only I had played Wii Sports!
Okay, but let's actually crack open Wii Sports so I can show you what I mean. Here we go.
But first,
Only a small percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. If you want to see more, consider subscribing.
it's free and you can always unsubscribe later.
Here we go. And wow. First things first, the music in this game alone is great. It's just so cheery and bright. It's really awesome. But let's open up the actual game. Here we have our selection of sports, and I want you to notice how these aren't just some short basic minigames. Each one has been developed fully and really feels like, well, a game. Alright, here we have the first sport, tennis, and as someone who has a deathly fear of more menus, this terrifies me. Am I the only one who found this needlessly complicated as a kid? Like, it was just asking me what score to count to each game, and yet I couldn't help but break a sweat from seeing this screen. Well, here it is, the game itself. I remember never using this guy in front, like, ever when I was younger. Again, weirdly, that was just too complicated for me, and I ignored it. And yep, this is kind of it. It's tennis, what did you expect? Hit the ball and time it right, move around to hit it, that's it. And yet, this is honestly really well done. It doesn't feel so limited when playing, it feels like a game of tennis. The motion controls work surprisingly well here, and I find the difficulty always seems to be just right, no matter who's playing. I can almost find a challenge here. I also want to point out the inclusion of Miis here. See, up until this point, very few games ever let you use custom avatars in-game. I mean, sure, it existed, it happened, but this game was the first one to really spread the idea. It was always so cool to me, I mean,
Hey, that vaguely human-shaped object looks like me.
all in all, tennis is a pretty solid time. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Also, a quick side note, I like how it tracks your progress and improvement in the game. They had no reason to include that, but they did. Props to Nintendo, I always found that kinda neat. Alright, baseball. As someone who has a deathly fear of shapes, this terrifies me. This has a little more to it than the last one. You start with brutally smacking this orb thing, and wow. I can't believe Nintendo would allow this violence in their game. I always found the motion controls with this one were a bit more finicky, but it works pretty well overall. There's just some times where I know I definitely should have been able to hit that, and then my character just decides to give up. The game then switches to throwing, and this is also pretty basic, and yet there's something so charming about the simplicity. It's not trying to be something too complicated, just a competent, fun little game that anyone can pick up and play. The game switches between these two mechanics for each round of the game, and goes on a lot longer than tennis did. It feels like it has more to it, and it doesn't really drag for the most part, and yet there isn't that much to talk about here yet again. It's just pretty straightforward and fun. 10 out of 10. Now, bowling, oh, this is what got 60-year-old me the ladies. I always was pretty good with this one, and it was one of my favorites. Probably purely because of the satisfaction of hitting the pins over. This is humanity's peak. Nintendo's always been good with sound design, but the sound of these tricky little pinheads falling to meet their demise is something else. Truly a masterpiece. And the gameplay is cool too. As someone who has a deathly fear of slippery wood, this terrifies me, but swinging the ball across it to where you want it to go, into the pins, is surprisingly intuitive once you get the hang of it. The motion controls are a bit tricky here, mostly for beginners though. I swear every time someone plays this game for the first time, they immediately swing backward and murder everyone in the crowd. It's inevitable. Honestly, with how often this happens, these people are probably here on purpose. They probably have like a death wish or something. They're asking for it. But once you get the hang of it, this game's a blast, and it's still fun to murder some NPCs now and then. Shameful that Nintendo allows such violence in their games. That being said, an easy 10 out of 10. Now, I want to take a break here to talk about the training. We've got 2 more sports to go in this masterpiece of a game, but I want to talk about this first. See, not only are 5 well-crafted, fun, and intuitive sports included here, but the team also is cool enough to include a bunch of smaller, bite-sized minigames as well. These feel a lot more like tech demos, but each one clearly has so much care put into it. I can smell the pure genius that went into each and every one. I won't go over them all, not because I don't want to, but because I just don't want this video to be an hour long. That's how much is here. I honestly enjoy some parts here more than the main games. Remember the satisfaction I mentioned in bowling? Well, this minigame has that times 100. Nintendo knows very well what we want, and it's this. 10 out of 10. Again, they put so much more in this game than they had to. It's really just a glorified tech demo, but they just put so much heart and soul into it. Just truly a masterpiece. But okay, let's move on to our final 2 sports. First of all, golf. As someone who has a deathly fear of grass, this terrifies me. That being said, this game is great. Like, this makes sense. The physics and game logic here are incredible. You hit the ball too hard, it takes a hard turn, just like I'd assume it would in real life, but I'm kind of too afraid to find out. It goes in the water, it sinks. You have a ton of different club options that each have different uses, and the ambience is peaceful and quiet. This is Nintendo nearly at its finest. Breath of the Wild has the greatest open world, try Wii Golf on for size. As long as you can hit the ball there and it's within bounds, it's free real estate. This is a game everyone needs to experience, if not for the calm that just takes away any care in the world, then for the fun of pure exploration this game has. Oh, yeah, and you can hit the ball in the hole. Funny times. 10 out of 10. And finally, boxing. The only sport here without balls, and as someone who has a deathly fear of having no balls, this terrifies me. This one is incredible. You have to break out the old nunchuck, and am I the only one who always broke these old things? You attach it, and wow, now I can beat up hairy men. Remember how I said golf was nearly Nintendo at its finest? This is its finest. The motion is so natural, the reward so tangible. The others were good, even great, some of the best gaming experiences in the world, but this is what gaming was always meant to be. The game perfectly tailors itself to your skill level, and pay no mind to the fact that the motion controls here are garbage. Just pay attention to my smooth, truthful voice. Now, look back at the game's menu. Isn't it something incredible? Look at the games. Isn't this amazing? Every part of this game is perfect. Every moment precious. The graphics are simple yet bold with their universal appeal. Children and adults around the world have banded together to experience this game that is truly the greatest art piece of our time. The gameplay, the graphics, the audio, the concept itself, everything works together so well. From the moment you first open this game and swing your first foul, land your first gutter ball, kill your first pedestrian in the crowd, to the ultimate moment when you realize you've become a master, this game is a gem. It deserves to have sold each of the 80 million copies it did. This is incredible. This is legendary. This video was sponsored by Nintendo.